The topic is the African American press. The guest is Mr. Sam Latham, and we're talking about the newspaper that he has, the Urban Journal. And of course, Mr. Latham, let me continue the conversations that we've interrupted on two different occasions, but the information flow. But let's pick up at where we were talking about advertising.
Well, Dr. Heaney, you know, we were talking about the potentials and the oversight or the undervalue that's placed on this market, which really is not good for business in general. But there are certain attitudes that prevail that prevent, I think, an objective look at the community. So we were talking about earlier 153,000 people, $2.2 billion of spending power. That's documented, okay? So when we look at it like that, then if the average retailer will spend 2% of their gross income to cultivate their market, which is typical. Some industries it goes higher. For instance, cosmetics and some of the other industries, they spend a little more money on marketing because they have a low product production cost. So marketing becomes magic. So let's look at that 2% figure. Then that means that if things were as they should be, then there would be a $44 million a year market advertising to cultivate African American spenders just in the Nashville area.
$44 million.
Yes.
That's,
So that means that all of the media, you look at all the media that address the African American community, there's tremendous opportunity, and so there's not a lack of market. So we could grow just exponentially without interfering with each other. So what I do in terms of our gross income won't affect any of the other media. There's enough for everybody. So most of it is just lying there dormant at this point. So it takes a different approach to advertising. I think we were talking before the show about one of the other mediums having trouble getting advertisers. You have to be a little more sophisticated now. And you have to show them, when I'm speaking of them, the marketers, advertisers, just how spending money in black media will pay off for them. And that has to be done with research, with figures. For instance, if I'm going to see an automobile dealer, I'm going to go armed with the knowledge that African Americans spend over $200 million a year on new cars. Then I'm going to find out the price points of that particular auto dealership. If it's a Mercedes dealership, which we've just closed a contract with, then he's interested in those homes that earn $75,000 a year and more. We have those. Nashville is fortunate. The per capita income in Nashville for African Americans is second only to Atlanta in the South. Okay, so it's a good qualitative market. On the other hand, in Memphis, Memphis is more qualitative. The per capita income is much less, about $1,800 a person less than what exists in Nashville. And I think that's because of the educational institutions, of the plethora of blue-collar jobs that are good, Saturns, the DuPonts, the Nissans in the marketplace. These are people who can earn $60,000 a year with a high school education, so that's good. On the other hand, if I'm going to see a grocery store, even though there are almost 14,000 single head of household women in our community, they still spend $4,700 a year on groceries, even if it's food stamps. So that's valuable to the Krogers and to the Food Lions and some of these other places. So that levels the field in terms of spending. So you have to do more than just go sell an ad today. And that's why I feel good about this industry. I do research every year. I train my account executives to never go on an appointment unless they're prepared to talk about that particular industry. And we live in an information age, so finding information is not as difficult as it once was.
And you can demonstrate to these various retailers about
in black
how
and white, where they can understand it. How that's, and you look at, there was a myth a few years back, and it still exists in some people's minds, that you know, they can reach everybody they need to reach through the mass mediums, the Tennessean, or through the network television stations, but stations like what you represent, it's a fragmented industry now. In 1950, 90% of Americans could be reached through NBC, ABC, and CBS.
Good.
Now that's 50% and declining rapidly. Okay, the Tennessean, it used to be that you could reach the majority of the people. That's declining, and it's even faster in our community when we look at the market segment that we represent. So they reach about 38 to 40% of market segment that we reach better than 80% of. We can cultivate that community at probably 1/10 of what it costs to cultivate through the major media. So there's advertising waste and exorbitant price tag associated with it. So when you break it down like that, I think it makes sense.
Well, now it seems to me that there ought to be a new brand of executives dealing with the mass media, television or print or whatever, that can recognize this. I mean, this did not just happen over the last 2 or 3 years. This has been a long...
It's been a long time. And the national media is recognizing, I guess, quicker than the local media. For instance, that's why BET sold at such a record amount of money, because they realized the consumption dollars associated with the African American community, that we're quicker to spend our money. So it's a valuable market segment in terms of retail business and the way that goes. But locally, you still have some people who are holding to tradition a little bit too much.
And not willing to make the investment that, and of course this would be a minor investment in terms of, for example, to deal with a newspaper like the Urban Journal, for example.
Well, yeah, let me give you an example. For instance, McDonald's. McDonald's deal with us on a regular basis. They found that we can cultivate the inner city better and at a lower cost than the major mediums. So we distribute 40,000 inserts about 6 times a year for McDonald's. They'll still use the Tennessean for the suburban areas, but because of our efficiency in covering the African American community, then we get that business on a national basis. This week we're also doing a distribution drop for Captain D's. We'll do one for Shoney's in a couple of weeks. We've done some for AutoZone. So those companies nationally, when I put together proposals, they're more receptive.
They understand exactly what it means, but yet...
But in Nashville, Dr. Haney, I think the advertising industry is probably the most segregated industry in the city. To my knowledge, there are only 2 African Americans who make advertising decisions for the major advertising agencies in this whole city. And
only 2?
Only 2.
Well, now, it seems to me that if they recognize, and that's the problem that I'm having, because, you know, this is a financial money kind of thing.
Sure.
That if they recognize that they can exploit this, this market, then I don't see how they cannot have African-American county executives and et cetera, dealing with
I still don't know it, especially when you take into consideration all of the educational institutions that train people for marketing and business and advertising, that no more are being accepted into this. I guess it is. I can't think of any other industry that's segregated.
This is almost to cut off your nose and to spite your face.
It is.
In a real sense, because
it is.
they're missing many opportunities of that for that market. Yet it's not giving you the advantage that you really need, because
it makes us work harder, Dr. Haney, because in most cases, to be successful, we oftentimes have to go to the businesses on a direct basis and explain this economic breakdown to them. Then they will call the advertising agency in a lot of cases and say, well, yes, we want to do this. So
you have to, in a literal sense, go over the heads of the advertising executives in order to try to get business.
Sure.
And businessmen who are standing behind them recognize that that market is out there.
Oh, yeah.
They're not being sold that market.
To give an example of that, a few years ago when Nissan first came into the marketplace, the company representing Nissan actually got angry at me because I got an appointment to see Mr. Runyon and ended up getting an $18,000 contract that he readily okayed, but the agency didn't want him to do it.
Didn't want to deal with it.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And of course, we've got about 30 seconds here, Mr. Latham, and let me over the last 30 seconds. Thank you for coming by and bringing us that excellent information.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Essentially, that's what we wanted to try to do, to sort of get this whole question out of advertising, because we see so much of it, yet and still we recognize that African-American newspapers are not receiving the kind of advertising that, and you're to be congratulated for the courage that you've been able to display in terms of simply trying to stay on top of all of this. And let me encourage our audience to